as we encourage each of you to get involved in your community and political party of your choice. However, the views expressed in this forum are those of the individual candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters. By sponsoring this forum this evening, the League provides an opportunity for citizen participation and exposure to candidates, but does not provide an endorsement of any candidate or candidates. All viable candidates have been invited to participate this evening. Tonight's forum will be for the House of Representatives for SD 34 and the Senate race for Senate District 34. In tonight's forum, the candidates will start with 4 of the 5 questions they received in advance, in which they have 1 minute to respond. Then our candidates will have up to 30 seconds to respond to each of the questions that are coming from the audience. Finally, they will be given 1 minute for the final question that is their final statement. Candidates, the League would like to request you refrain from making any personal attacks on your fellow candidate. I'd like to take this moment to point out our timekeepers for this evening. They will show you when you have 15 seconds to finish your statements, then show you that your time is expired. Please finish your sentence at that time, as I will be directing the next speaker's turn. The order has been randomly selected. For the audience, please remember to turn off all communication devices at this time, and there will be no photography for the duration of the forum. I'd like to introduce the candidates tonight. We have, for the Senate race, we have Sharon Bahensky and Warren Limmer. And for the House of Representative race tonight, we have Kurt Zellers, Senator Kurt Zellers. Representative yes. Kurt Zellers, yeah. And his challenger, David Hoden, could not make it tonight. So unfortunately, due to league rules, we're not able to have your forum tonight, and you will have to step down. But thank you for coming.
I would hate to lose a debate to myself. If I could just thank the League and the Chamber as well for hosting the event. We do appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for your support in keeping an open and fair discussion about the issues in our area. So thank you for that. And I will step down.
So we are going to start in alphabetical order with the first question. Sharon, Ms. Bahensky, please tell us about your background and previous civic involvement that support your candidacy for this position.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Many of you know I do not have legislative experience, but I've been active in community, church, and school affairs almost my entire life. However, I do have extensive business and international experience, which I believe would be an asset while serving in the Minnesota Senate. Let me explain. I was a marketing promotions manager for Fortune 200 companies. Later, my husband and I worked as a team, living and working in the former Soviet Union for 10 years. We helped agricultural and agribusiness leaders convert from the socialist command economy to a capitalist market economy. In the international arena, I needed the skills of my business experience, leadership, management, budgetary, and management to be successful, as well as the ability to negotiate and compromise in order to solve our cultural differences. I might agree it took a great deal of perseverance and no small amount of courage. These are my personal attributes and skills that I offer to you, the voters. Thank you.
Mr. Limmer.
Hi, my name is Warren Limmer. I'm the current Republican state senator in the cities for Maple Grove, Osseo, Dayton, and Rogers. What an exciting term of office we just had. We just finished the budget, and we moved a $6 billion deficit into a nearly $1.5 billion surplus. But looking forward, we need to continue building on our recent reforms with an immediate goal of growing jobs in our state. Simply put, we need more jobs here, more businesses. A family security comes from a good-paying job, not a government program. I'll continue to demand that the government be limited yet efficient and always be the guardian of our civil liberties. As we begin tonight, I wish to thank the North Hennepin Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters for hosting the event, and I look forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Okay, our second question, we'll go first to Mr. Limmer. How do you propose to address the budget deficit that is projected for the 2013-2014 biennium?
We've had a number of years where we've faced budget deficits, much larger than the one that has been projected this coming February. That's about a $1 billion shortfall. We just took care of a $6 billion shortfall by using prudent fiscal management. We looked at budgets. We shortened up budgets. We cut spending where it was unnecessary. And as a result, we did balance the budget by doing exactly that, good budget processes and good prudent management. I think Minnesota has a long way to go in order to bring our budgets down even further, and I don't think even a $1 billion deficit is going to be a serious problem.
Ms. Bahensky?
It's a simple truth that we need a combination of new revenue, spending cuts, and government reforms to get this state back on track. You might be tired of hearing that answer, but it's true. For 10 years, we've been led by lawmakers who took a pledge not to raise taxes or consider one dime of new money to help stabilize our budget. And look what it's gotten us in 10 years. In 2003, we faced a $4.5 billion deficit. Guess what the 2013 deficit is? $4.5 billion. In 2003, we promised to do some big government reforms and start saving money. Guess what the incumbent lawmakers are again promising to do when they get back to the Capitol? Find reforms and save money. The budget that Senator Limmer says was balanced was done on the backs of $2.5 billion from the schools and borrowing money from the tobacco. We need fresh ideas in the state Senate.
Thank you. Question number 3, we'll start with Ms. Bahensky. Do you support increasing income taxes on individuals? At what income bracket do you support raising taxes, if any? And how do you define fair share for taxes paid by individuals and married couples?
Well, I'm in favor of taking a good hard look at our entire tax system and finding out what works and what doesn't. As I said, the state has so many deductions, credits, and exemptions, and it's been years, really decades, since we've taken a serious look at them. I also believe middle-class families shouldn't be paying a higher share of their income than the wealthiest among us, especially when property taxes are escalating, college tuition, K-12 school fees, and other everyday expenses. It's the middle-class families that are taking the brunt of the taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer?
There's no surprise we have economic difficulties in our country, not only in Minnesota, but across our country and even across the world. I can't imagine raising taxes on hardworking people in the state of Minnesota in order to balance an overbloated government that I think is already in existence. We took an example of just the last 2 years. We did correct the budget with a serious deficit. Our problems are not going to be solved by raising taxes on any classification of people. I will vote against any tax increase that comes along, simply because I don't think it's the prudent way to go, and we have waste in government that still is there, and we need to rout it out.
Thank you. Question number 4, we'll start with you again, Mr. Limmer. Do you support a single-payer health care system for Minnesota? Why or why not? What effect do you think a single-payer system will have on Minnesotans?
Single-payer health care is basically when the government collects all the money to pay for it and then provides for all of the medical services, or nearly all the medical services, to offer to its citizens. It's completely run by the government. I'm very concerned about that. I don't believe that the government is the most efficient way to run anything. Just look at our Social Security system. It's near bankruptcy. Medicare, near bankruptcy. Medicaid, near bankruptcy. All run by the federal government. And now a single-payer system is now being touted as being an option that we should consider. Another big government program run by the government. I just don't think it's the best way to do it. I believe in the free enterprise system, the competitive model that keeps our costs down.
Thank you. Question number 5, our first responder will be Ms. Bahensky. The achievement Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I do that at least once during a.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. You know, affordable quality health care should be available to all Minnesotans. Our current health care system is not working very well for a great many people. For example, close to 500,000 Minnesotans, 70,000 of them children, had no health insurance in 2011. In my view, we should watch carefully as the Affordable Care Act goes forward and see how it impacts people of the state of Minnesota before we go much further in other health care options. Let's see if that works. If it doesn't, then we would have to go look elsewhere.
Thank you. Now we'll start with you again, Ms. Bahensky, on question number 5. The achievement gap is a statewide concern. What strategies would you recommend to address this issue, starting with early childhood education?
Well, we have this achievement gap. We know it's there, and it has to be taken care of. I think we need to stabilize the education funding, pay back the school shift and the dollars that have been paid that have been taken from the school budgets, and then invest in early childhood education and all-day kindergarten. Lower the class sizes, and then provide extra learning opportunities for the students who are struggling after school hours. Those are my thoughts on education.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer?
Thank you. The achievement gap is being referenced is oftentimes put in racial terms. People of color are not achieving as well as those who are not, as their counterparts in white student communities. This is a serious problem in the state of Minnesota as well. Across the nation, we see it also. The programs that we have seem to not be working. In some of these areas, we still have kids that can't pass 8th grade equivalency tests when they graduate from high school. There's something wrong, even though we spend nearly double the amount of money in some of these communities than we do in our own Osseo school district. I'm all for focusing on the attention of these kids, but it really starts not only in the schools, but with the parents, the families, churches, and other elements that are great influences in the lives of these young people. I believe that we really need to expand some of the programming and the outreach to some of these programs to raise that ship for these kids.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll start with questions from the audience. So we'll be doing the 30-second rounds. And we will start again with Mr. Limmer. Looking back at the past government shutdown, what would you do differently to prevent a future shutdown?
You know, I think we were all new at the time. We had new majorities in the legislature. We had a new governor. We all wanted to bring forward the changes that the people who we thought sent us there. I think an earlier discussion with all the players in the legislature, trying to offset some of the more volatile elements of conversation. And I think really closing down the state, walking away from conference tables really is not the thing to do, and all parties should commit to themselves to get the job done.
Bahensky?
I would never vote for a government shutdown. People are elected to the legislature to take care of the business of the state and stay at the table and negotiate and compromise. And compromise doesn't mean my way or the highway. Everybody's got to give a little bit and make it work. Thank you.
Next question, we'll start with Ms. Bahensky. What are your priorities for education policy and funding?
Early childhood education to start with. Give the kids a good start. You know, I agree with Warren. In the achievement gap, part of it starts with the family. And early childhood helps, but I think we're dealing with a lot of other issues in those cases as well. But I would say early childhood, reducing class sizes. That would be my priorities.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer.
Could you repeat the question?
What are your priorities for education policy and funding?
Well, if we have the backdrop of a future deficit, we're going to have to be a little cautious on how we handle the dollars. Education funding is a priority. It's outlined in our Constitution. The question that I see is I don't believe we have equalized funding to all school districts across the state. That hurts school districts in growing communities like the Osseo and Anoka, Hennepin area. And I think we have to first equalize funding a little bit. That'll keep the costs more equal. It'll provide that constitutional requirement of an equal education to all students, which we don't have.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with you again, Mr. Limmer. How can wetlands be better protected and preserved?
Well, in 1991, wetlands went through a very large protection process in the legislature in Minnesota. However, we keep seeing some of the wetlands being intruded on by development. We also see in times of drought, nature takes its course on it as well. But wetlands are an area that we've now funded through our legacy program that was part of a sales tax addition. And we're still kind of working the bugs out on that. But I think we're going in the right direction in protecting wetlands and other conservation-sensitive areas.
Ms. Bahensky?
I'm not really familiar enough with that, with the wetland situation to comment on it tonight.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with you, Ms. Bahensky. Do you see a need to improve election procedures? If so, what measures would you promote?
You know, according to the Secretary of State's office, we have very little voter fraud in this state, and yet we're now faced with a constitutional amendment on voter ID. I really see no need for it. I think that it's voter suppression, and I hope, quite frankly, that it doesn't pass. The other thing is it's unfunded, and the rules haven't been written yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer?
Well, I take issue with my opponent, and I happen to be the chief author of the voter ID bill, the one that was vetoed by the governor. And as a result, the legislature decided that it was such an important issue in the part of the voters' mind that we give them an opportunity to tell government what they want. And I think that's a freedom that we exercise on behalf of the public. I think voter ID will certainly guarantee that the people that are supposed to vote are the very ones that will vote. It'll identify who they are and where they live.
Thank you. Next question. Our first responder will be Mr. Limmer. If it came time to vote on items that are in your party's platform but was not favorable for most of those living in the area you represent, how would you vote?
I am first elected by the people of my district. That's who I represent. A political party gives an endorsement, just like any other citizen action team that might give an endorsement. But ultimately, my responsibility is directly related to the people in my district. They would always have the priority when it came to a conflict that may be faced.
Thank you. Ms. Bahensky?
I agree. You know, if I were elected to the legislature, I wouldn't be voting red or blue, black or white. I would vote what my constituents, with my constituencies' advice.
Thank you. Next question. We'll start with Ms. Bahensky. What is your position on gun control? Do you believe our current laws are adequate?
I have sons that hunt. They all have guns. But I take issue with everyone having the right to carry a gun wherever they go. I'm sorry, but it's just, I think, and all we have to do is look around at some of the things that are happening. And I think we need stricter gun control laws. And the NRA won't like me.
Sometimes don't like me either, but nevertheless, when it comes to gun control, and the gun laws in Minnesota, if we would only enforce our existing laws, I think we would have plenty of gun control. I happen to be a supporter of concealed carry. I believe it's an effective means for home protection as well as individual protection on the streets. There have been no problems in the state of Minnesota when that went into effect. And I also believe that it's also a simple citizen's right to keep and bear arms, and I believe that is the appropriate measure we should go.
Thank you. Next question. We'll start with you, Mr. Limmer. What legislative measures would you support to encourage job creation?
Oh, job creation is certainly a key issue, and it's certainly one that's desperately needed in the state of Minnesota. We have to get control of our taxes, especially the regulatory costs and the state-imposed expenses on our businesses. Other states do not have that, and our corporations have to add that cost onto their products, and it's not competitive to sell a product when other states have lower costs. It simply is not competitive, and we have to lower these rates in order to attract job makers and job creators for our state. All of our ships will rise on that tide. Oops.
Thank you. Ms. Bahensky?
I think for job creation, the best thing we can do is have an infrastructure bonding bill. It'll put people back to work. It'll begin work on our roadways and government buildings. It'll put people back to work, and I think it's in the best interest of the state. Right now, the cost of money is cheap, and I think that we need to really look at that very seriously.
Thank you. Next question. We'll start with you again, Ms. Bahensky. What is the role of the legislature in managing our water resources?
Well, I think that the legislature should manage the water, work closely with the DNR in managing our water resources. We have a lake home, and I would not want the legislature not to take, to control what's happening with the lakes. We have a beautiful state park, brand new, on our lake, and we're just very, very happy with that.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer?
Water resources, if anyone knows, in Minnesota, a land of 10,000 lakes is vitally important not only to the success of our state economically, but also to the quality of life here. They don't call it public waterways for nothing. It is public waterways, and we have a direct responsibility to protect our waterway systems, not only our on-surface water, but the groundwater beneath it. And we should be keeping a very close eye on what pesticides and other things that we put on the ground, as well as our ecological protections that are necessary.
Thank you. Next question. We'll start with you, Mr. Limmer. Do you believe the minimum wage should be increased? Why or why not?
Minimum wage, I think, at this very time probably should not be raised because it would be an impact to jobs. Anyone who runs a business, if they have a cost that goes up, they're going to offset that cost, and I'm afraid people that are working part-time, like our students and our perhaps our elderly people that are retired, they will be the first ones that will be fired from that job in order to compensate for that higher cost of wage. So I don't think at this time it would be wise to do.
Thank you. Next question. We'll start with you again, Mr. Limmer. Under what conditions do you support legislating with constitutional amendments?
I'm sorry, what?
Under what conditions do you support legislating with constitutional amendments?
Constitutional amendments are ones that are guaranteed as a right of the public to participate in. I've come to the point that any question that we may have is appropriate for the legislature to give to the people of Minnesota. And I don't think we should be fearful of that. I think there's a lot of collective wisdom in the public's eye, and they can handle just about any question that we would offer them. It's not something that we do on a normal basis, but on a unique basis where we need their advice, it's appropriate to do.
Thank you. And now we'll ask Ms. Bahensky to answer the other question. Do you believe the minimum wage should be increased? Why or why not?
I guess I have to be honest and say that I'm not going to answer that question because I haven't looked at it seriously enough.
Thank you. How about under what conditions do you support legislating with constitutional amendments?
I don't support legislating with constitutional amendments. I look at the two amendments that are on the ballot this year. The marriage amendment, there's already a law in the state of Minnesota that defines a marriage between a man and a woman. Why do we need to put it into the Constitution? You know, it's taking away people's rights, not guaranteeing them. And the voter ID, the voter suppression, again, I think that's unfortunate, especially when it's unfunded and there are no rules written. I'd rather see the rules written and the funding put forward first.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with you again, Ms. Bahensky. In what ways would you communicate with your constituents?
I would have town hall meetings on a regular basis throughout the session, and at the end of the session, have a town hall meeting and communicate the results of the past legislation.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer?
Well, in the past, we've certainly communicated by mail, email, telephone surveys. There's times when even in the middle of a debate, I'll call randomly citizens and ask them how I should vote on a certain issue that I'm going to be facing in the next hour. They get quite surprised by that. Also, town hall meetings are certainly an option as well. And so there's just a whole host of opportunities to exercise and engage our public.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with you again, Mr. Limmer. What is your position on local property tax levy limits?
Well, levy limits sometimes comes into the legislature. I believe that cities elect, communities elect their city representatives. When they make a decision to raise a levy, that's the relationship between the city council, let's say, and the citizens. And it's up to the citizens to keep those individuals up to speed as far as whether they agree or not agree. That's a direct responsibility. I don't believe in a big government telling little government what to do. So I would be opposed to levy limits.
Thank you. Ms. Bahensky?
I would agree with Senator Limmer on that. The cities elect their officials, and I believe it's the officials' responsibility to set those limits.
Thank you. And now we'll go to our last question, unless there are any other questions from the audience. Okay. So number 6, the closing question. In summary, how do you intend to best serve your district and move the state forward? And we'll start with Ms. Bahensky.
The best way to serve my district is responsive to the people that live here, not to a political party. The state capitol has seen too many good lawmakers diverted by special interests and political parties. The longer someone's there, the more time they have to become entrenched in party politics. That's not okay. I'm humbly asking for the votes of my friends and neighbors here in the vicinity, and I would take the honor of being elected very seriously. We have unique needs in this part of the metro that don't always fit into Democrat or Republican molds. Likewise, our residents have unique and varying ideas about how to move the state forward. You have my word that I'd listen to my constituents about anyone else on all issues and cast my votes accordingly.
Thank you. Mr. Limmer?
Thank you again. My name is Warren Limmer, and I'm the current Republican state senator for the cities of Maple Grove, Dayton, Osseo, and Rogers. As I said before, we just finished an exciting session in the Capitol where I was the chief author of the voter ID bill, as well as the chief author of making it a felony to intentionally abuse a vulnerable adult. And on top of that, I helped to move a $6 billion deficit into a $1.5 billion surplus, all without raising taxes. Despite our success, though, we still have challenges. We must continue building on our recent reforms, run a lean government, and prioritize our spending while focusing on the immediate goal of building and making jobs in the state of Minnesota. I'll continue to demand that government be limited, yet efficient, and always be the guardian of our civil liberties. In closing, I'm asking for your vote. It's been an honor serving you. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you. Once again, on behalf of the League of Women Voters and the North Hennepin Area Chamber of Commerce, I would like to thank the candidates for agreeing to participate in tonight's forum. I would also like to thank the voters for attending and participating by submitting excellent questions. And I would like to thank the viewing audience as well. Remember that if we could not get to your questions tonight, if you have any further questions for the candidates, we invite you to contact them directly with your concerns. Please remember to get out and vote on November 6th because your vote truly does count. Thank you and have a great evening.